Hello everyone, let's start our video conference. Today's topic, drugs and alcoholism. Well, mainly today we are going to clarify the two main goals for today's video conference. Number one, our first goal is to show the urgency that has the elimination of these two different psychological defects. And number two, if the student has suffered or has had problems, inconvenience with these two different activities, psychological defects inside of him, and finally he could defeat them, he could teach others how to eliminate them, right? Yes, but teach affected people by these defects how to regenerate them, right? If the student has eliminated them, he could teach others how to do it, all right? Well, all of us without exception have these two different psychological defects inside of each one of us, right? Even if never we've done drugs, but only with any inhalation due to any smell we get in any part of the city when we pass by the side of other people that are or have been doing drugs, with that impression, just with the inhalation, right, of any type of drug, we created this specific psychological defect in ourselves, all right? And probably most of us have drunk alcohol, all right? It's necessary to clarify also that these two different processes, the process of alcoholism and drugs, is managed by a specific demon called alcohol. This is one of the most evil demons that exist in our Earth planet, right? And this demon literally, this is a being that unfortunately manages these processes all around the world. All right? Now, it's necessary to understand how he considers himself in relation, in association with our current mankind. Nowadays, unfortunately, he's the owner of the Earth planet. This demon, specifically this one, the owner of the planet. He is the thief of our solar atoms. All right? With each drop that we drink of alcohol, immediately he takes our solar atoms, which are in our seminal wrap. He's the father of corruption and misery. Also, at the same time, he is the father of degeneration. At the same time, this demon poisons the reason. Our intellectual part to destroy the mankind. Okay? Unfortunately, in different type of events all around the world, related, associated with sports, politics, social events, and so on, we see the presence of alcohol and drugs. And unfortunately, it is common nowadays to see how the different companies that produce alcohol, cigarettes, etc., are immersed in all these social activities. Right? So let's analyze some other characteristics about drugs and alcoholism, right? Everything will be associated with this demon, right? Not only when we talk about video games, when we talk about, for example, some specific satanic music, but also with these two different processes, unfortunately, there are black magicians or black wizards that are taking control, are in charge of all these processes to destroy our mankind. And it's typical. It is typical. Unfortunately, the presence of alcohol and drugs is something common. It's typical in the different levels of our society. All right? In any party, in schools, universities, for example, events associated with sports, as it's been told, politics, is something real. All right. So alcohol has the power of ubiquity. It has the power of ubiquity. He appears everywhere. Everywhere. He doesn't even respect age. He doesn't respect teenagers, adults, etc., etc. All right? Now, some other characteristics. Let's see. Let's talk about something more details or points to analyze, to reflect on today during the video conference, and if possible, after the video conference. Well, some other characteristics are that, unfortunately, finishes with the possibilities of being. Of achieving our own self-realization. That's why it's necessary to be radical with alcohol and for sure with drugs. If sincerely and seriously we want to seek, to achieve, and even to deserve our inner purification, it's necessary to delete these two temptations, because all of us, as it's been told, in our inner worlds carry these two different psychological defects. We do have in our psyche these two psychological defects. Right? So thanks to self-observation, it's possible to detect them in order to delete them with the inner petition to our Divine Mother as soon as we feel that desire of drinking alcohol or doing drugs. Because all of us, without exception, have it. Right? Not only in Europe, Asia, South America, Central America, North America, etc., etc., but all around the world, unfortunately, this is a reality. If anyone honestly wants to advance in the secret path, it's necessary that sooner than later to detect them and eliminate them. All right? Now, something else that is necessary to reflect and to understand is, for example, that in sex, when we talk about sexuality, this demon, and for sure, these two different psychological defects, brings us to the worst behaviors in our sexual life. So these two different psychological defects, the worst is drugs. Normally what we can see here is that we pass through this process to finally then go to the drugs. This is less dangerous than drugs And it's the first step, usually, commonly, to pass finally to do drugs. There isn't any possibility to transmute wisely our sexual creative energy if we drink alcohol or do drugs. So the transmutation of our seed, of our sexual creative energy, is not possible if we continue with these activities in our life. Right? And when we talk about the worst behaviors in our sexual life, we may affirm that homosexualism lesbianism, oral and anal sex, threesomes, orgies, and so on, are in many cases due to alcohol and drugs. We lose our sense. We lose our mind. We get mad when we put ourselves into any one of these activities. Right? So there isn't any possibility of regeneration thanks to the practice of suprasex, sexual alchemy, when currently in our lives we are associated with any one of these two different processes. All right? Now, another situation to reflect and to analyze, talking about these behaviors, are that yes, there is pleasure when someone do drugs or drink alcohol, but the consequences of doing this, the consequences of pleasure, are always pain. Always. All right? Also, alcohol and drugs degenerate religions. There is also an influence over crimes. When anyone is under the influence of alcohol or drugs, it's easier to commit crimes, to commit all those delicate mistakes in life. Murders, rapes, etc., etc. It breaks our ethical sense. our basic principles as well. Religious principles, for example. So for exactly the same influence, when we are involved with any one of these two different processes, it breaks our family, for example, as well, and the society. And we can see easily how broken is our society nowadays. All around the world, in hundreds and probably thousands of families, there is alcohol or even drugs. It increases also weakness. Is it possible as well to become ourselves thieves when we fall into alcoholism or drugs as well at the same time? Right? There is no any possibility of achieving, of seeking sexual chastity to light the sacred fire, the Kundalini, if we are sincerely interested in sexual alchemy, when we are into these processes. Also, consumption of drugs or alcohol stimulates fantasy. Also, at the same time, it is not possible to develop that capacity of concentration and that development of conscious imagination, right? And concentration and conscious imagination are crucial, are essential to achieve our daily purification. Without concentration, it's not possible to seek our self-realization. And it's necessary also to develop conscious imagination with the presence of the atoms of the alcohol and drugs in our physical body, in our vital body, will fail for sure in our efforts to purify ourselves. Concentration and conscious imagination. Well, also it's necessary to talk here about some specific rays in our brain that are destroyed when we drink alcohol or do drugs. Those are called alpha rays. In fact, alpha rays allows us that minimum capacity of concentration when there is the real connection between the brain and our psyche or mind. But if we drink alcohol continuously or do drugs, these alpha rays are broken, and immediately that connection between psyche, mind, and brain, this connection is at the same time broken, okay? We need to regenerate these alpha rays. These alpha rays represent a minimum vibration established between our mind and our brain. All right? So by continuing with this different type of behaviors, each one of all these alpha rays is destroyed, and this connection is broken immediately. So that capacity, that ability of concentration, even more that faculty of concentration, is immediately broken if we continue with these processes or behaviors in our life. That's why it's been told that we should be radical with these common and usual and typical behaviors in our current society. Right? Through practices as, for example, meditation and psychological death and sexual alchemy, it's possible to recreate again our alpha rays. Okay? To establish again once more, and hopefully for the rest of our lives, this essential connection, the one between the apparatus, the physical apparatus, called brain, and our psyche. All right? Where there are our psychological defects. These are some characteristics and consequences that produces this demon called alcohol. All right? Now, how all this started? All this started in the 1960s. When the Aquarius age under the regency of Uranus which is the planet that governs our sexual glands, this planet controls and governs our sexual glands, the sexual glands of the entire mankind. And more specifically in 1961, 19 61 in the month of February entered all this influence called Aquarius age under the regency of Uranus over all our mankind. Right? And immediately started a crucial and essential vibration called that Dionysian wave. And that Dionysian wave established immediately the positive Dionysian pole and the negative Dionysian pole. Let's see. Most of us, the majority of our mankind, unfortunately, locate themselves in the negative Dionysian pole. When we talk about it, we are talking about infernal music. Only a few located themselves with classical music. The music of the great masters, Beethoven, Mozart, Liszt, etc., etc. Here, the negative Dionysian pole unfortunately established the worst behaviors related and associated intimately with sexuality. Here we talk about homosexuality, lesbianism, etc., etc. Alright? Homosexuality in both genders. Gays and lesbians. Talking about the negative Dionysian pole. Only a few of the earthlings established themselves to work with something called the transmutation of sexual creative energy, also called sexual alchemy. Sexual alchemy. Alright? Due to this Dionysian wave that entered with the influence of Aquarius age, under the regency of Uranus, our mankind established themselves with these different behaviors. The majority of our mankind located here, and only a few chose this pole, the positive Dionysian pole. Right? Sexual degeneration, infernal music, and also drugs, alcohol, etc., etc. Instead of drugs and alcohol, that amount of mankind that established themselves in the positive Dionysian pole chose meditation. Alright? And working with this specific behaviors, classical music, Mozart, Beethoven, sexual alchemy, meditation, it's possible to light the sacred fire, the Kundalini, which is our sexual creative energy going all the way up, ascending by our dorsal spine to create the 5 solar inner bodies. Kundalini, all right? Sexual creative energy going all the way up through our dorsal spine. But unfortunately, with these behaviors, infernal music, homosexuality, lesbianism, drugs, alcohol, etc., most of us unfortunately developed that inner organ called Kundartiguador. Kundartiguador. All right? To go at the same time to the infernal worlds of each one of us. This is the satanic tail called Kundartiguador, and this is the Kundalini, the sacred energy going to the heavens, to the superior dimensions of our entire universe. All right? Most of us here, only a few here. All right? This is the origin. This is where all this started. All right? Thanks to this influence. All right? Any type of drug, cocaine, marijuana, LSD, all those different types of tablets, etc., make us to develop this satanic organ, satanic tail. And instead of drinking alcohol and doing drugs to achieve those higher states of the consciousness, that's possible through the practice of meditation. We don't need any one of these processes to acquire, to achieve higher and even the highest states of consciousness. Only with meditation, classical music, and the correct usage of our sexuality, of our sexual creative energy, it's possible to achieve it. To go to the heavens. And when we talk here about heavens, we are talking specifically and literally dimension number 6, number 7, and even more. Right? Such degeneration, the ones we see here currently in our society, in our Earth planet, is due to this situation that happened in 1961. All right? Only a few have accepted these different type of behaviors. But most of us, unfortunately, are here. And for us, homosexuality, lesbianism, drugs, alcohol, infernal music is something that each time is more accepted, more common. Incredible but true. Right? Now, some of the consequences when we talk about drugs. talking about the different consequences of the 7 different bodies that we may develop in our inner worlds, in our life. Let's talk about the different consequences. When there is the inhalation, for example, when we do drugs, well, unfortunately, the consequence associated with the degeneration of the physical body is a reality. All right? We get older. Faster. When we practice the inhalation, doing drugs, for example, the channels of our lungs are connected literally to our sexual glands. Ovaries in women and testicles in men. So that's why if we affect our sexual glands, immediately we get older faster. Inhalation of drugs are the worst for our sexual glands. Now, what happened with our vital body? It gets darker. Let's see, let's try to make here a fast image. This is only the recreation of the human physical body. Here is the aura, that magnetic field that all of us, without exception, even plants and trees, animals, minerals, all of them have. This vital body, this aura, is affected because its size immediately decreases. All right? So gradually, if we continue drinking alcohol or doing drugs, we'll be like this. Some months later, like this. And gradually, something like this. All right? In a normal person, in a person that doesn't drink alcohol or do drugs, the aura, the magnetic field, is brilliant and bigger each time more. Right? So that magnetic field is brilliant and even bigger. If the person practices meditation, if that person takes care of his or her sexual creative energy, and that person listens, for example, to classical music at the same time, and if that person is eliminating or, deleting his, her psychological defects, his aura will be brilliant, more and more brilliant, each week, each month, each year more, and bigger for sure, without exception. But in a person that does drugs or, for example, drinks alcohol, that magnetic field gets darker and darker and darker. All right? And gradually decreases its size. All right? And there come illnesses, different type of illnesses, all right? Now, what happened with our astral body? Most of us, without exception, have an embryo of astral body. But with that embryo of astral body, it's enough to dream and to remember our dreams. And to, for example, make astral travels. To awake the consciousness right there in that fifth dimension called the astral world. Also called the molecular world. Our psychological defects are intimately associated with our embryo of astral body. So, when we drink alcohol and or do drugs, we are feeding our ego. And if someone, for example, has deleted a specific amount of psychological defects, unfortunately, that person gives life again to all those previously murdered psychological defects. Deleted, eliminated psychological defects. Right? What happened with the mental body? For all those that already created it, and for the rest of us that only have an embryo of mental body, as it's been told previously, those alpha rays are broken, are destroyed. Because the connection between our brain, the physical apparatus, the brain, and the mind is broken again. And not only is affected the concentration and conscious imagination, but also we get in madness. Literally, we produce madness in our psyche. Now, what happened in the causal world? What's happening in our causal world or causal body? Even the essence suffers the consequences of our actions, of any one of these behaviors. The essence suffers the consequences of our behaviors. Here, through techniques of meditation, it's possible to know the sixth dimension, and even our essence suffers the consequences. She gets mad with any one of these behaviors, alcohol or drugs. Right? How to delete them? First of all, it's necessary to have the will, because if we don't have will, will to delete these two different behaviors of our lives, in our lives, it is not possible to achieve it. How to delete them? These two different psychological defects. How to delete them? Remember, all of us without exception carry in our psyche, in our mind, in our ego, the psychological defect of drugs and the psychological defect of alcoholism. First of all is to detect them through the practice of self-observation. Only observing ourselves, we could detect them, those inner impulses, those inner desires of drinking alcohol or even doing drugs. Through with this first practical tool of transforming our lives, self-observation, we detect them. But remember, without will, it's not possible. But okay, let's see. We may believe that if we are into any one of these two different processes, we have will. Perfect. If we have that sincere desire, that yearn, the first step is to detect those inner temptations. Do we want to do drugs or do we want to drink alcohol when we are alone, in loneliness, for example? That's highly possible. Okay, first of all, if we have will, next is to detect all those inner psychological defects that impulse us, that make us live and feel that temptation, that desire of drinking alcohol. Right? And then, remember, after the self-observation, after detecting the psychological impulse, the psychological defect, that inner temptation, immediately the inner petition to your Divine Mother, mentally from the bottom of your heart, focused in your heart, sincerely say something as follows: My Divine Mother, please delete me this desire of drinking alcohol. Or, my Divine Mother, delete me this desire of doing drugs. And you'll feel immediately, at the very moment you make your inner petition mentally from the bottom of your heart to your Divine Mother, you'll feel, you'll see how the defect, the psychological defect, is deleted immediately, instantaneously. That's all. My Divine Mother, delete me, eliminate me this psychological defect, this alcoholic defect. Any one of these ones, right? With this simple technique, first, obviously, to know what we want to remove, to delete, to eliminate from our psyche, is necessary to detect it, right? That's possible through the practice of the self-observation technique. At the very beginning of our inner process of purification, we don't sincerely know how to apply in ourselves the self-observation. But gradually, with that effort, with that serious and honest and real intention of knowing ourselves, of observing our inner reactions represented in lower emotions, lower thoughts, sexual desires, negative sexual desires, because there is the positive erotism for sure, which is the erotism of the inner being. Gradually we'll be detecting more and more accurately each day more those psychological defects that are controlling our lives and making us to commit all these different crimes against our own inner being. So with this petition, this simple petition to that female part of God called the Divine Mother that all of us have inside without exception, we'll see the change immediately. Do not believe me, please, but prove it. One of the main things that I affirm here during all these studies is that please do not believe me. Prove it. Remember, self-observation to know what is necessary to delete, to remove, to eliminate from our psyche, right? And then immediately that superior power called the female part of God inside of each one of us, named the Divine Mother. That female part of God, of our own inner being, of our own consciousness, has the mission to delete every single detail that we detect if previously we apply self-observation in our psyche, in our inner world. And not only for these inner temptations that for sure all of us have inside, those psychological defects related and associated with alcoholism and drugs, but with any type of psychological defect: envy, rancor, resentment, hate, pride, masturbation, criticism, anything, fears, angers, gluttonies, etc., etc. This is called psychological death. And also it's necessary to study ourselves since another point of view. For example, to detect all those desires associated with the activities of doing drugs and drinking alcohol, all right? When do we have these specific desires? Also, to analyze our justifications. Those excuses to continue drinking alcohol or doing drugs. All right? For example, justifications when we are alone, when we are in depression. Okay, if we are in depression, immediately ask to your Divine Mother mentally to delete your psychological depression, and you'll see immediately how this reaction, this level of reaction of negative emotions immediately decreases. And you continuously, please, continue with your inner petition to your Divine Mother, and you'll see how the depression disappears, or that inner impulse to drink alcohol, or when you're feeling any type of envy, fear, pride, etc., etc. It works for every single psychological defect we carry in our own psyche. When, for example, when we go to parties, all right? If, for example, we win, if we are a sportsman, and we win a tournament, for example, it's typical to drink alcohol or even do drugs, right? Talking about sports, it's obviously when we talk about sports, as it's been told, also in politics, we find too much alcohol and too many type of drugs. The justification, desires, and also please to analyze our bad will. Those actions of bad will, those facts of bad will, when and why we do feel bad will to immediately go and drink alcohol or do drugs again once more. Analyzing and detecting these three different type of realities in our own psyche, desires, our justifications, and actions of bad will finally comprehend these two psychological defects. Our inner alcoholics and our inner desires of doing drugs. Remember, usually the first step is alcoholism. And then the second step, the worst one, is drugs. Alright? Also, if, for example, we know a drug addict, a person that is seriously affected by drugs or alcoholism, let's go with him or with her at 4 or 5 a.m. to a park, only to breathe, make inhalations, retentions, and exhalations. Probably all of us have known in our lives at least one person that is affected or has been affected by any one of these two different behaviors. Okay, they don't have the will to go themselves to a park at 4, 5, or even 6 a.m. Please go and pick him up, pick her up, and go to a park with that person where you can find trees, many. Go to a park with a person. The best hours to go to a park with an affected person by drugs or alcoholism is 4 or 5 a.m. Even 6 a.m. is a nice, perfect hour to go to inhale air, to breathe, all right? To decontaminate their lungs, all right? And a lot of patience with these people, because they deserve love. They deserve love. They deserve as much mercy as we can give them. All right? With these simple exercises of inhalation, retention, during 5 seconds, something like this, and finally exhalation of the air in a park. Go to the nature. Inhalation by your nostrils, only and specifically through your nostrils. Retention of the air during approximately 5 seconds, and then exhalation only by your mouth and make several various repetitions, you're helping the person to decontaminate their lungs. All right? So this is another nice exercise to help the people. All right? Some other questions, for example, to reflect on. When we are in interaction with any person that is affected by drugs or alcoholism, for example, questions. Until where it brought me in my life. Right? How far it brought me. How far it brought me in my life. Number 2, damages to my family. Damages. There are too many relationships nowadays broken due to these two realities. So damages to my family, for example. Something else to reflect with those persons affected by drugs or alcoholism is, for example, the type of relations. Thanks to these realities in my life. Okay, so by reflecting on any one of these 3 questions, these 3 aspects, possible there will be an honest and deeper reflection that probably will make us comprehend the urgency of becoming something different. Well, thank you very much for attending this new video conference, and if there is any question or doubt about it, please feel free to ask me and I will respond to you shortly. Bye.